A lot of people think what I do is a party. It's a party. No, it's not. It's hard work. You get up and you go to work. You walk on stage smiling. If you can't do that, if you can't leave your petty stuff at home or breaking up with your girlfriend or your dog died, if you can't leave that in the wings, don't come out here and mess around. You're going to get your heart broke. If you got a fire in your belly, tap it, expand it, pay attention to it, rehearse it, practice it, live with it, live it, eat, breathe, sleep it. If you got a fire in your belly, go do it.
Okay, Victoria, you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
I'm David Sams.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
Hey, you just stepped on me.
Oh, yeah, well,
you like
get
that,
used
don't
to
you?
it. I do.
Well, I made a little road trip about 30 minutes down the road last week.
I know, while I was in Europe.
Yeah.
That's the only reason you're
showing off.
forgiven.
Oh, my gosh. I got to go to a sort of ranch kind of place.
Uh-huh.
And he had this like combination of studios that is put together for, I think, since the 70s on his property. It was like something out of the past, but yet it has all the technology of the present. It was historical when I walked in. It was just...
And I had to miss it. I'm so bummed. I love this guy.
And when we arrived...
Was he playing a fiddle?
Well, his bus was out. His bus was out front, and all these guys were coming and going out of the bus, right? That's because they were going to go on the road the next day, because he still does over 100 dates per year, and he's 83 years old.
83.
We're talking about Charlie Daniels.
The one and only Charlie Daniels. There's nobody like Charlie Daniels.
Victoria, he's going to reveal his secrets that he talks about in his new book called Never Look at the Empty Seats.
I love that title.
So you're going to do a little Charlie for us?
I know every word to one of his most iconic songs. You want to hear it a little bit?
I don't think I have any choice.
You don't. Devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind. He was way behind. He was willing to make a deal. The devil jumped
I wish you could all
on a
see
stump
her
or
getting
something.
into this, swinging her little arms, and oh my gosh.
It helps me. I know every word. You're messing me up because you're staring me down.
Can we just listen to Charlie?
Let's listen to Charlie.
Here's Charlie Daniels. All righty, Charlie.
Yes, sir.
How did you find this place? I mean, this is amazing. You're so close to all, but you have this just majestic piece of property out here.
The piece we're sitting on right now, I know people can't see it, but we're about, as the crow flies, about a quarter of a mile from my house. And we built this studio, and this it's a studio, a shop, a place to store merchandise, storerooms, all kind of stuff. It's a multi-purpose building that we're sitting in right now. This has been here for, I don't know, probably 25 years, something like that.
And you have recorded a lot of music in here.
We do all our records here. And that's the great thing about it. I used to have to drive back from Nashville at 3 o'clock in the morning. Kind of tiring going in every day and recording and come back late at night. And one of the things I really wanted was a studio.
And who all has recorded in here?
Well, I've basically, we don't really rent the studio out, but I did an album. We've got all kind of people coming out. I did an album called Deuces a while back. I did a bunch of duets with people. We had Travis Tritt and Garth Brooks and Vince Gill and Gretchen Wilson and I'm Darius Rucker. I can't remember who all, but a whole bunch of people that come out here and recorded. You know, they weren't doing their records, but they're working on mine.
Let's go back to that time that you were growing up. Tell me about those early years. Tell me about
how early you want to get.
Well, let's talk. I want to go back to your mom and your dad.
I came up, I guess, about like anybody at my time did. My dad worked hard. I come from a farming and timber background. We moved around quite a bit all over the South. Well, not all over the Southeast, but North and South Carolina and Georgia. And I was to go with as many as 3 schools in one single year. I'm only child. I come from a very affectionate, close-knit family and loved music all my life. I always loved music.
I was listening to your audiobook. You know, I love audiobooks.
Well, we did that right here.
You did? You recorded it right here. Yeah. Well, that's great. And, you know, the folks that are looking at your book, and even if you bought the book, you got to get the audio because it's you telling the story. That's the great thing about audiobooks, is especially when the guy writing it tells the story. I don't like it when they have somebody else telling the story.
Yeah.
You just don't get that same thing. But you got to tell your story. I loved hearing about all of those stories about old time radio, what that meant. Also, when you started watching TV and there was one channel.
Yeah, well, there's only, I didn't know there was but one channel. I never saw a picture on TV set like I can't. I've tried to think about it because I've written about it and talked about it, but I was probably 14 first time I saw a picture on a TV set. Mm-hmm. But radio was king. And when I came up in the 30s, and my earliest memories would be the late 30s, when I came up, there was radio stations were not formatted. They were not even formatted necessarily for music. They played music part of the day, then it had to pick up something off the network and do, whatever all these soap operas were. I used to hate them. But because they'd come on and knock Lone Ranger off for a while, and I was sat waiting for Lone Ranger and for all these kids programs to come on in the afternoon. Then they played music. They start off in the morning with music. They'd play music good part of the day. Then they would go into the afternoon soap operas, and at night they'd do Fibber McGee and Molly and the Eddie Cantor show and all those shows that were broadcast live. So they played every kind of music. You literally had to meet the FCC mandate of something for everybody because they'd own a game in town. So they would play country music. They would play about 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 or so. There were a lot of ladies that stayed at home at that time, a lot of housewives. They would play something they figured that they would like. And about the time the kids got home from school, they started playing whatever the popular music of the day was, which I remember when it was big bands. It was Tommy Dorsey and, Harry James and those guys. And you would get a smattering even of maybe even classical music on a late Sunday afternoon or something. But Sunday was basically devoted to church services and gospel music. And you get everything from black gospel music, little small guitar-driven, trios or quartets or whatever, up to the more solemn, more classical type of music by the big choirs. So I got some of all of it. And if you're from the Southeast, you're going to be exposed to the blues. And, of course, I got a healthy dose of country all the time. I listen to Grand Ole Opry. Everybody in my neighborhood, everybody I knew listened to Grand Ole Opry. They could tell you what Roy Acuff sang and what the joke Minnie Pearl told. I mean, people they didn't just listen to it. They were into it. They felt like they knew these people. And so I got some of all kinds of music, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that my writing is all over the place. I write all kinds of different stuff. And I think it's because of that early influence that I was exposed to so many different kinds of music.
So as you were growing up and you were getting into music, that was a big thing to get on the radio, wasn't it?
Oh, good gosh, yeah. Yeah, getting on the radio. I didn't get on the radio till I was living in Gulf, North Carolina. And if you look up on the map, get a magnifying glass because it's still just a small pencil dot on the map. But I went to school. There's 22 people in my graduating class. The whole school was in one building. But anyway, I had a friend by the name of Russell Palmer. I went up to see him one afternoon. I'd known him for I don't know how long. I had no idea he had a guitar. I till this day don't know where he got it from. But he had it, and he knew it literally about 2.5 chords. He could play G. This was all laboriously done. This was not, going from one to the other. He played C, and if he took the time and looked down and placed his fingers just right, he could play D. But I thought it was the most incredible thing I'd ever heard. I'd always wanted to learn to play, but I had nobody to teach me. And I said, "You got to teach me that. I want to. What are you doing? You show me." So he started showing me, and I started. This old guitar. It was an old Stella guitar, and I tell people it seemed like the neck on it was about the size of half a fence post, and the strings had probably never been changed on it. They were all rusty, But that was the beginning. That's where I started. Was learning those. And when I learned 3 chords where I could play a whole song, I thought I had really accomplished something. And to be honest with you about it, from that moment on, all I ever really wanted to do was play and sing. I had no desire to do anything else. And of course, being a professional musician in my part of the country at that time was really right next. There was 2 chances, slim and none. I mean, to make a living at it, you could play square dances on the weekends or something like that, but not making a living at it. But that, to be honest with you, that's all I ever wanted to do. And that was when I was about 15, and I'd be 20 19 and 20 before I ever really started making a living at it.
And when did you first pick up a fiddle?
I got a hold of a mandolin, and I learned the fingering on a mandolin. And somebody showed up with a fiddle one day. Now, the fingerboard on a fiddle and a mandolin are the same. Of course, one's two-string cluster, and one is a one string, and you play one with a bow and one with a pick. But the fingering's the same. So I had to get a hold of that fiddle and fool with it. And I was awful. Kid I went to school would say when I played the fiddle song, somebody stepped on a cat. And it did. I mean, it's a tough instrument to learn, but I was stubborn. I really wanted to do it. So I was probably, to answer your question, I was probably 16, middle 16, early 17, something like that.
Tell me when you realize you had crossed over from this being a hobby to this being the real deal, this being a profession.
I moved back to Wilmington in 1956. And I was through school. I started working at a daytime job there. In the meantime, I got a chance to get a job working up at a club in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is about 50 miles from Wilmington. So every night we'd drive up to Jacksonville, play, and then drive back to Wilmington to work the next day. And I did that for almost a couple of years. 1958, there was a slowdown at the place I was working, and they were going to lay somebody off. And the guy that I worked with knew 10 times more about the job than I did. In fact, he had trained my dad, and he had trained me to do what I was inspecting green timber, and he knew much more about it than I did, much better at it than I was. But they were going to lay somebody off, and they were going to lay him off, and the only reason they were going to lay him off was because he was black and I was white. Had nothing to do. It was back, this was in 58 when, before the integration thing really started happening. There started being any real honest movement on people on integration. And I was making more money at my nighttime job than was my daytime job anyway, but I said, you don't want to fire him. Or lay him off. Lay me off. I've got another job. He's got a family. Let him stay. And he did. And he worked there till the day he retired, which I'm a guy named Lewis Frost. I'm glad it worked out that way for him. But I went on. I cut the apron strings. And in late stages of 58, I got a chance to go and work the summer at a place on the Chesapeake Bay up in Maryland. And I said, this is it. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to devote my life to. This is what I want to do. You guys want to go with me? Had a 4-piece band. And they had daytime jobs. And they said, yep, we will. Let's go. In fact, one guy was only 17 years old. He hadn't even finished school. And his dad let him go with us. And he was supposed to take correspondence courses. He never did. He never did get a high school education, I don't think. But we all took off. Bunch of bright-eyed kids from Wilmington, North Carolina, going out to see the world. And I've been going ever since.
And what happened to those guys?
All of them, the 4 original people that I left home with, 2 of them have passed away. And The other one I still see once in a long while. He lives down in Georgia. And once in a while, if I play down there, he'll come see me. But 1959, a guy called me up. He wanted me to come to California. And of course, I was game. I wanted to go. I never had been anywhere. I never been west of the Mississippi River. And so we said, we're going to California for a week. So we booked a bunch of gigs out there. We took off out there. And I knew a guy from Jacksonville, North Carolina, who had been in the Marine Corps there by the name of Bill Belcher. We went through Fort Worth, Texas. He had got out of the Marine Corps and gone back to Fort Worth. We went through to see him. Long story short, he introduced me to a guy that worked at Bell Helicopter and cut records at night, trying to get into the music business. His name was Bob Johnston. He said, you want to make a record? And I had a band there, I said, we don't have anything to record. He said, let's write something. And so we did. We set our instruments up in his mother's house. And we wrote an instrumental thing called Jaguar, and we went and recorded it. Anyway, Epic Records released our master. And we had to do a B-side. So on the way back from California, going back to the East Coast, we stopped in Fort Worth and did the B-side, and they released it. And it was what you call a turntable hit. It was added. There was a station in Arlington, Virginia. It was probably the top station in town, top 40 station. And you could set your watch every 2 hours they played this record. But it didn't sell through. It was not a real hit. It was just everybody thought it was going to be a hit. It sounded like a hit. But anyway, that's where I met Bob Johnston, and we developed friendship, and we started writing together. We started writing songs together. And he called me. He said he had gone to work for a record company in New York, Columbia Records, and done pretty doggone good. He was recording Bob Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel, and anyway, Don Law, who was a legendary record producer, was in Columbia Records, was fixing to retire. And they wanted Bob to come down here to Nashville from New York and take this over. And so he called me and said, "We'll come to Nashville. Let me talk to my wife." It took 15 seconds. So we said, "Yeah, we'll come." So anyway, that's how I came to Nashville in 1968 and been here ever since.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced as a young artist?
Learning to entertain, because I learned there are a lot of really, really good musicians, but there are very few really, really good entertainers. And I got to see a few of them work. One of the finest entertainers I ever put on the stage was Jimmy Dickens. Little Jimmy Dickens. He was a great entertainer. I had seen some good entertainers work, and I knew that they were the people that stayed employed all the time, and I wanted to learn to entertain. Basically, entertaining is establishing rapport with people, and I tried to do that, and it took a lot of years to do it. It has a lot to do with how you sequence your songs on stage. Right now, to this day, I plan sets out like as if they were a war map or something. I put certain songs in certain places because you're dealing with an emotional level, and you can't keep it on 10 all the time. You start it off at 10 and you leave it at 10 and a half if you can, but someplace in there's got to be some 7s and 8s and things where it kind of goes up and down, or you wear people completely out in a few minutes. So that's a big part of entertaining to me, is how I sequence my song. You got to learn how to talk to people. You got to be able to communicate with people. You don't have to be a comedian, but if you think of something humorous to say, it's pretty nice. But you got to let them feel like they know you, and you know them. And another thing was hard. I am not a natural musician. I have to work till this very day. I keep guitar close to me, whether I'm on the bus or at home, and I still practice scales. Even if something I've written, it takes me a little bit longer to get my part together than it does the other 5 guys that play with me. I mean, I got some really great players, and they pick it up, very easily. And sometimes it takes me a little longer to get my third part. We play 3-part harmony on guitar sometimes, and it takes me a little longer to get my part together. So that part was hard. The musicianship part was hard, but I think the most difficult part was being honest with yourself about what entertains people, because you tend to, especially when you're young, you want to be like somebody else. I don't know how many people tried to imitate Elvis Presley when he came out. And you want to put your style on. All you have to go on when you first start is somebody else. You're not going to start out unless you're Mozart or some 1 in a million type person. You're not going to start out being an original. You're going to start out playing somebody else's music. And in the clubs that I played in, the more you could sound like other people, the better off you were. And I sound like a whole lot of other people. I used to do impersonation. I could do Fats Domino and Elvis Presley and believe it or not, Keedy Wells. And that was entertaining. People they called it imitations. It was impersonations, but they called them, do your imitations, And it was, or playing Malagueño on the guitar or something like that. But that was all stemming off of somebody else. When finding yourself as to who you really are. And I did that in the studio. My 5th album was called Fire on the Mountain. I decided I am going to go in the studio, I'm going to open my mouth, and what comes out is going to be my vocal style. And I did, and I've been doing it ever since. And it has evolved a little to some extent. But that was a very difficult thing to me to do, because I guess it's because you don't really have confidence in yourself. I mean, he does it good, sound like him, And to let that go, just to turn it all loose, say, I am going to be me. I'm going to write songs for me. I'm going to sing songs like I want to sing them. I'm going to play them the way I want to play them. I'm going to arrange them the way I want to arrange them. Record companies are going to be, what the hell's that? Well, that's me. That's what I do. That's what I sound like. But those were the hard parts as I look back. Learning to play, start with, learning to entertain, learning to be yourself.
So for any young artist or musician out there, what I'm hearing from you is that it wasn't until your 5th album until you really found your true self. Mm-hmm. How many years was that between when you got the first album and the 5th?
I cut my first album in, I think, 71, and this was 74. But I did more albums. I used to have to do an album a year, and more than that sometimes. So 71, 72, 73, I probably cut. Well, I cut those 4 albums in that length of time, and I just never was happy with them. I never felt good about what I had on there until I got to Fire on the Mountain. I was happy with it. I mean, I'm not the greatest singer in the world. I mean, I don't pretend to be, but it all comes down to communicating. Can you get a song across? I can do Devil Went Down to Georgia and make you understand what I'm talking about. That's my music.
So when did you realize that you had that iconic song and it just took off?
After about the 4th million.
When the money was in the bank.
We cut that song as almost as an afterthought. We had rehearsed. I was on Epic Records, and I was working with a guy named John Boylan. We had written and rehearsed an album's worth of material. Now, we're talking vinyl, so you could only do 40 minutes. So we had enough songs to cover 40 minutes of vinyl. And we went into the studio and started recording in Woodland Sound in Nashville. And so I said, we don't have a fiddle song. Now, why we didn't realize this before we went in, I don't know. But we didn't think about it. We didn't think it was important. So we said, we got to have fiddle songs. We moved the instruments into a rehearsal studio, out of a recording studio into a rehearsal studio. I had one line in mind, Devil Went Down to Georgia. In my mind, it was there. That was all I had. I had everything else. We set up, drummer started playing this, bass player started playing this, and Taz came up with that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it just clicked in my mind, and I started writing this song. Then I knew what I would write about. The old Faustian Devil and Daniel Webster story about a guy betting his soul against doing something better than the devil did. And I knew where I wanted to go. It was a matter of getting there, and the guy win, and I never let the devil win. And just going through and doing, filling it in. And I went off and wrote the lyrics to it and came back and we recorded it. And as I say, the rest is history.
And what was it about that song that really hit a nerve with the audience?
It was totally different than anything you heard on the air. It was the lead instrument on it was a fiddle, as opposed to being, most stuff was guitar ribbon and a few horn things and keyboard, but this was a fiddle. This is a country fiddle. And the story, everybody likes to see the devil get beat. The story, the way it unfolds, the way it's put together, the arrangements where the devil and Billy are dueling, and Johnny are dueling with each other. I've had people say, I thought the devil won that. And I said, no, you're not listening. Can you hum the devil's part? No. Can you hum Johnny's part? Yeah. We see what the devil's doing. He does like he always does. He's all noise. He's all smoke and mirrors and noise. There's no substance there. So I used 7 fiddles on that part. You probably do it electronically now, but we did it organically then. I did 7 fiddle parts, and they all beat together, making that sound that the devil made. But once I got the idea, and we got started, it came together really fast. And John brought an engineer in from Los Angeles named Paul Grupp. He was 21 years old. He's just a dead-blame genius. We had never worked with anybody like him before. And it all came to, everybody was so into this thing. The band was into it. The producer was into it. The engineer was into it. We were all of one mind, and everybody agreed, let's try this. Oh, man, let's do that. Oh, that's working. Let's do that. Hey, try this with it. Do that. And ideas popping all over the place. And let's move this over here. Let's do. And it was like, first thing you know, you're sitting back in front of a bunch of speakers and you're listening. You say, wow. But as far as knowing what the song was going to do, I did not. Our bread and butter radio at the time was what they called AOR stations, album-oriented stations, where if they liked an album well enough, they might go 2 or 3 cuts deep into it. And that's what you were looking for. You were looking for extended airplay. You wanted everybody that had an air shift to play a cut off of your record. That way you sold a lot of albums. So that's what we were looking for. And I thought this will do real well for us at AOR radio. But I don't know if it's going to, if it'll go what we call top 40 at the time, but just in case it does, we're going to take this off-color word out. We're going to do one with an off-color word, son of a, and we're going to do a son of a gun version, and we'll have it available because I didn't think I call I tell people I cut a Baptist version and a Methodist version. I won't tell them which is which, but I thought just in case we're gonna do it that way. So we did, and it was amazing. I had other records that had done fairly good. It took off Uneasy Rider, a record we had in '73, had taken off pretty good and all, but I'd never had anything like this. It's like if Uneasy Rider was a bad cold, then went down to Georgia, it was typhoid fever. I mean, it just, and we were as amazed as everybody. It was like, it just kicked our whole career up. It was kind of funny. Today, we got a text from a guy who is a mountain climbing enthusiast, and he sent a text and he said it was kind of weird. We're on the Chile Argentinian border. We just crossed over to Argentina, and Charlie's on the radio for the devil went down to Georgia. But that was the thing. It went all over, Japan and Australia and New Zealand and Europe and all over the place. It just went. And we all of a sudden things started happening to us. We started playing big halls. We started playing on the radio a lot. We started getting calls from television shows wanting us to appear, and all these things were happening. And all of a sudden, there it was.
So you didn't let the devil win in that particular song, but when was there a time in your life where you faced your biggest challenge and the devil did win or almost won?
Well, he's won a few times. I mean, as far as enticing me into doing things I had no business doing. I'll tell you one of the biggest personal challenges. You're talking about the book I wrote. I had a chapter in there on my faith. And that was the hardest chapter for me to write. Not that I didn't know what I wanted to say. I knew what I wanted to say. But I come from a very confused spiritual background, let's put it like that. I went to so many different churches. I heard so many different doctrines. I was told so many things were sins. I was told so many things there's no way you can live a life of a Pharisee. And there's so many people that are always waiting to tell you that you goofed up. That's a sin. That's a sin. That's a sin. People tell you, you'll go to hell for drinking a beer. I'm not trying to encourage anybody to drink. I'm not doing that. But let's look at hypocrisy for a while. If it's a sin to have a drink, why would Jesus Christ turn perfectly good water into wine? Why did he drink it? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It gets to be such an outward thing. Is it like you present this facade of religiosity or whatever you say, and you act a certain way, and that ain't the way it is. You need to be yourself 24 hours a day. And the Bible says man looks on the outside, God looks on the inside. So is my heart right? I may be doing all the right things, spouting off Bible verses every 5 minutes. I may be going to church constantly and all that stuff, but if I ain't right in here, it don't make no difference. I have all kind of flaws out here on the outside, and if my heart is right, it's good. And I was trying to say that in my book. I wanted people to understand what I had gone through and what my journey was and how I had arrived at what I believe. And I knew what I wanted to say, but how would I go about saying it to try to where other people would understand what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of people out there that are in the same place and are coming from the same direction I came from. A lot of people. And they go from pillar to post, and they're looking and looking and looking. And I decided years ago, I said, I am going to take my Bible. I'm going to read it from cover to cover. I'm going to make my own conclusions about what it says, along with the theology of other people who I very much respect, and I very much believe that they're right. I will combine that with, but I'm going to read it myself. I'm going to see what I think about it. And you have everything's not an epiphany by any chance, but I still run across things in the Bible and say, well, wow. How many times have I read that, and how many times have I not really understood what it was talking about? So basically, what it comes down to is Christianity is a personal thing. Because you may be looking at somebody straight in the eyes and telling you love him, and you may hate his guts and wish you could just reach across and slap him or something, That's not being right in your heart. Forgiving's hard to do, but it's an absolute requirement. And I've had trouble with it from time to time. You're talking about things that I've fought with. I've had trouble with forgiving people. I've had trouble with not laying up in bed at night and just thinking about, I think I will, man, I'm going to, and no, you don't do that. It's not worth, it's harder on you than it is on them. And it's that kind of thing. But that's a constant struggle. That's always going to be a struggle. But you cannot. You get so caught up in trying to live by the law. According to Jesus, all of our commandments are tied up in two: is loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. He said it. I didn't. I have no authority to say it, but he does, and he said it. So you analyze those two things. You love God, you love your neighbor, which means if you love your neighbor, you're not going to be trying to steal from him or steal his wife or all these other things about adultery and theft and covetousness and everything. If you love your neighbor, you're not going to be doing it. If you love God, you're going to do you're going to try your best to do what he wants you to do. So, it's all tied up in those two things. And yet, we run from pillar to post and thinking, our outward appearances, what is our outward appearances? It don't make no difference what your outward appearances is. We worry about what people think, especially in my business. You're always concerned about what people think of you, what the last show was, what the last song was, what the last everything. And which is fine because that's my profession. But you can't carry it over into your life and think, well, if I don't go along with the crowd on this, people ain't going to like me. I have turned down things before it cost me a lot of money. Having to do with my career that went down to Georgia. In fact, we're always getting we got one today for people wanting to use the song, but I will not have it done in a way that, for lack of a better word, and this don't exist, frivolizes, the devil. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to have them, it's got to be done in certain ways. Commercials or whatever they are. And if it ain't right, I turn them down. I can't do it. I got to live with me. I don't have to live with anybody else. I have to live with me. And if somebody thinks, you're a fool, they offered you this money to do that, all you got to do is sit back and let it go. Why? Those things, that's what you deal with. That's what you try to deal with. But would I be loving God if I did that? No. Not like I'm supposed to. I love God, but that would be a bad way of trying to express it. I had to deal with a company, I won't even mention the product they make, many years ago, that I probably could still be on their payroll right now and probably have a great retirement and health care and all this stuff and would not even touch my music career at all. But I couldn't go with the product. I found out it was harming the product and I had to give it up. Those are the things you deal with. Those are the things that you come face to face with. I want to fatten my bank account, or I want to fatten my eternal account. And, that's where you run head to head with the enemy right there, because he's got a lot going, man. And that's when you start using that shield of faith and that sword of the Spirit and say, there's scripture apropos to every situation you'll ever get in. You have to think about it. You have to reach way back and grab it and think about something you read a long time ago or something, but it's there. That's what it's there for. And that shield of faith is got faith that I am doing the right thing by turning down this accolade, this money, this whatever it is that would further my career or further my bank account or further my prestige or something like that. I have faith that I know that I'm not supposed to do it, so I ain't going to do it, and it'll come back to me in a lot of different ways, and it always does. It always does.
Looking back over your life, what was the biggest struggle that you've had to contend with?
Well, in a personal way, years and years ago, I got involved in a situation that I take the blame for it. I had a business partner and a manager, and I'm not going to say his name because he's not a bad guy. In fact, he's no longer with us, but it was my fault. I'll take the blame for it, and I got way, way, way in debt to the point to probably, if I had broken an arm or something and not been able to work, it probably would have put me in, I probably would have lost everything I had if I'd been out of work for a couple of months. We had bills, and it was not my negligence that I didn't keep up with everything. We had stuff, we owed some people hundreds of thousands of dollars, banks. We owed some people $15 or $20. We owed some people $500. It was just screwed. So anyway, I called all my debtors. I took the whole thing on. I said, be patient with me, and I will pay you every cent I owe you. I can't do it all at one time, but just be patient. Everyone said, we will. We believe in you. We'll do it. And we went to work. That was a real grinding struggle. We had to start taking anything that come across our board. We had to take anything come across because we needed the cash. We needed revenue, and we strained. I had at the time 2 employees, an office manager, this lady sitting over here, Paula. She left with me. We operated out of my pool house up at my house, and we had 2 desks and 2 phone lines. And we started back. I made my road manager, who'd been with me for many years, my manager. JB, the other guy that stayed with me, JB Copeland, a bookkeeper, he is really good at what he does. He's totally and completely honest, and he believes in paying bills. And he started, and he's a big fan of Dave's. You pay the latest bill first, you get it paid off, you move to the next one, and that's what he did. And Christmas, we had a Christmas party. I can't remember the year exactly, but we walked out in my front yard, and I took the last piece of paper that said we were paid in full, and I struck a match to it, and I burned it in my front yard. That was a huge struggle, and it was so much pressure because there was no let up. You could not let up. You had to just keep going. You had to keep going. And in between times, we moved into a double-wide trailer over here on my place. We moved into that. That was our office. And then this house up here, this log house, it's our office now. It came for sale, and we came down and bought it. We moved down. We built the studio. God has blessed us. He has truly blessed us. That was a struggle. It was not just a struggle for me. It was a struggle for everybody who worked for me, because we all knew what kind of shape we were in. We all knew that it was dire. We all knew that it was going to take vigilance and everything we had to stay with it and get it done. And everybody did whatever they needed to do to get it done.
Now, you've written several books. First of all, what's it like actually putting your life down on paper? I mean, because that's committing to it. I mean, that's committing to, you're telling these stories in writing. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to sit here and talk about it. It's another thing to put it down on paper and have thousands of copies made, right?
I found nothing traumatic about it. I mean, I talked about some things that I seldom ever talk about. I talked about my dad being an alcoholic. I've never seen anybody try any harder than my dad did to quit drinking. Mm-hmm. And he stayed sober for 4 years at a time. And all of a sudden, he always said, I'm one drink away from a drunk all the time. And I dealt with that. I dealt with it as a kid. I dealt with it as a grown-up. And my dad was the best timberman in the Southeast. He never had a problem getting a job because he was so good at it. He could walk up to a tree and tell you how many board feet of lumber in it or what kind of pole or piling it would make. And millions of dollars changed hands because he would go cruise a tract of timber and tell whoever he was working for what it was worth. It's worth this much. And he was always right. And he never had a problem. He knew more about a pine tree. He loved pine trees like I love music. He never had trouble getting a job. He always worked, always took care of his family, but he had that one problem. And I learned about that. See, when I come up, everybody thought anybody that drank to the excess was just an old drunk. There's a lot of difference in an old drunk and an alcoholic. I've seen a lot of sorry old drunks, but I've never seen one sorry alcoholic. And I used to go to some of the meetings with my dad, the Alcoholics Anonymous. And everybody there, there are people that are heads of corporations that carry a chip around their pocket. One of those accomplishment chicks. I've made it a year, made it 2 years, made it 10 years. And there are a lot of people that are that way. They are, but I've never seen one sorry alcoholic, one guy that did not have responsibility about him. And the only time they had a problem was when they were on the bottle. The rest of the time, they were productive citizens, and they would go through and accomplish great things. But they had that one fault. It is a sickness. It's an absolute out-and-out sickness. There's a certain type of person. It's not genetic. I mean, not insofar as hereditary is concerned. It may be genetic in the genetic makeup of that one person. I don't know, but it is a real struggle for people to deal with. And that was another struggle in my life, another struggle that I was on up out of my teens before I understood the weight of what I'm telling you. That it was a big struggle.
What do you hope people that pick up this book or listen to your audiobook, what do you hope they come away with?
Well, it's just a life, my life. Of course, you cannot encapsulate your whole life within the cover of a book. You can't tell every experience and every emotion and everything you've been through. But I try to hit the high spots. I wrote this thing over a period of about 20 years. And I got into it, and I did about as much editing as I did writing. I'd go through and I'd say, well, nobody has any interest in my second cousin's third wife, and I'd take that part out. And, something that was maybe a big deal to me at the time, well, other people don't even know who these people are, This is not a big deal. And I tried to hit the high spots. I tried to hit the high spots and the low spots, and I tried to be honest about it, and I tried to tell my life story. And, of course, I didn't tell everything I've ever done by any stretch of imagination, but I hit, I think, a pretty good rhythm descriptively insofar as what the first 80 years of my life was like. And that's what I want them to get out of it. I want them to know me, to know my story. That's my story. And maybe find some analogies in there and maybe learn some lessons, although they're not couched in that knowledge that I come out and say, here's a lesson for you. There are a lot of lessons that a young entertainer, a young musician, a person that wanted to be in show business could learn by reading between the lines in that book. A lot of things that I did, me beating my head against the wall, you can avoid that part of town. But never, ever sit on your front porch when you're 83 years old like I am and wish to heck you had joined the circus. Don't let those opportunities go by. If you ain't got a fire in your belly, stay home. A lot of people think what I do is a moving party. A movable feast. It's a party. No, it's not. It's hard work. It's accepting responsibilities. It's work just like everything else is. And it means if whatever it means doing. If it means you operate on 3 hours sleep, you get up and you go to work. You walk on stage smiling. No matter what you're taking on stage with you, you put it in the wings and you walk out there and do it. If you can't do that, if you can't leave your petty stuff at home or breaking up with your girlfriend or your dog died, if you can't leave that in the wings, don't come out here and mess around. You're going to get your heart broke. If you got a fire in your belly and you can walk on stage in front of people and leave all that other stuff on the side over there, and your one desire in life is to entertain people, not just to make money, not to pick up girls, not to do all the things that so many people so many people associate with this business. It ain't that way. Stay home. Work at the Holiday Inn Lounge on Friday and Saturday night and play your local things and forget about this out here because this ain't for you. But if you got a fire in your belly, go do it. Do it while you're young enough where you can, and go out and get it done. But learn how to do it. Learn what you're doing. Put time and effort into it and learn what you're doing. And come on out here and show the world something. And don't try to sound like everybody else. We already got a Garth Brooks. We already got a Eric Clapton. We don't need another one. Do something different. Do yourself. That's what took me years to learn. Be yourself. I didn't know I could write up to relatively a few years ago. I write a column every week for our website. I just sit down and start writing. I sit down and start typing. And I didn't know I could do that. And it's a God-given talent. Explore it. He's not going to hit you in the face with it and say, here it is. I demand you to take this and go. You got to dig for it. It's down inside you somewhere. If you feel like you got it, tap it, expand it, pay attention to it, rehearse it, practice it, live with it, live it, eat, breathe, sleep it, and then go for it. And like I say, when you're my age, you won't be sitting on the porch wishing you'd joined the circus.
Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been wonderful. I would encourage everyone listening to pick up the book, and especially the audiobook, because then again, you tell your story firsthand. And
I appreciate that.
I love that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Boy.
Charlie Daniels. There is nobody like Charlie Daniels.
Isn't there a drink named after Charlie?
I
No,
wouldn't
that's
know.
Jack.
That's
Can you believe the amount of energy that guy has?
and he's 83 years old.
83. I mean, here's a guy that started in the business almost before there was TV.
Right.
I mean, it was, I think he said there was one channel or something like that. And he has remained relevant this entire time. That's the crazy thing.
It's crazy, but it's awesome. I mean, he can tell us about things that we don't even know. Even you You're even younger than Charlie Daniels.
What has that got to do with anything?
I'm just saying you could learn something from Charlie Daniels.
Great. So make sure you pick up a copy of his book. Also, he does an audiobook. And I love the audiobook because, he tells the story. So having Charlie, tell you the story. I listen to it in my car. It's
Great.
fantastic. It is available right now on, I get mine on Audible. So the book is Never Look at the Empty Seats by Charlie Daniels. Make sure you pick it up. I'm David Sams.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
And you've been listening to Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast from the producers of Keep the Faith.
Hey, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram or go to KeepTheFaith.com.
Now, if you enjoy the podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review Contagious Influencers of America.
Be sure to join us next week. And of course, thanks for listening.
And go out there and live that life in living color because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. See you next time.